This is a Flipping Junkie podcast, episode 23. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. All right, hey, welcome back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. This week I've got a friend of mine from San Antonio where we invest and live and everything, Marco Romero. And Marco's been interested in real estate since reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad at an early age. And after laying out a success strategy, which is very smart, he began to acquire the skills he would need in order to build a career as an investor. And he gained valuable people skills by working in sales and the restaurant field. And the experience he gained with all those things and working with a wide spectrum of individuals was critical to his success with investment properties. And since obtaining his real estate license over 7 years ago, he's worked for several investment companies in San Antonio and now successfully runs his business independently. He spent time in all realms of residential real estate, from standard single-family homes to small multifamily properties. And taking what he's learned in other fields, Marco has brought a philosophy that a transaction is never about the property, but rather it's about the people. And that's a very important thing for everybody to realize and take note of, because it's so true. Today I've got Marco on the show to talk about when to set up a company for your house flipping business. A lot of people stress about whether they should even do anything before they set up a company, and we're going to talk about the ins and outs of that and how we feel, what approach we feel you should take with regards to that. So it'll be a great episode, and be sure to subscribe on iTunes and rate and review the show. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps us out to get more people on the show and to keep it going. So thank you very much for listening to the Flipping Junkie podcast. And be sure to check out our real estate investor websites at leadpropeller.com. A really cool feature of that is where when a motivated seller submits their information about a house they want to sell to your website, you get a text message immediately with their information, and you can contact them directly while they're probably still on your site. And with that is how we kind of limit some of our competition, because we're able to contact them, talk with them, set an appointment to see the house, and they're a lot less likely to go back to the search results and contact any other real estate investors. So that really helps limit competition. So check out those very cool real estate investor websites at leadpropeller.com. Thanks again for listening, and let's get started. All right, so hello, Marco, you there?
Yeah, hey, Danny.
Hey, thanks for being on the show, taking the time to do this.
Hey, I'm excited to be on the show. Definitely looking forward to it.
Great. So for the audience, all the Flipping Junkie listeners out there, what you want to share, how you got started, what got you interested in real estate investing, and how you got your start?
Definitely. Actually, the way I really got started was I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad back in high school. And when I read that book, it really kind of shifted my mentality on finances, investing, business, and really got my mind going in that regard. Since that book, I always was looking to learn, always reading, joining a bunch of different seminars, being involved in whatever ways I could do at the time. Eventually, what really got me started, though, was I went to another seminar with a company here in town, San Antonio. And this seminar, it was actually with a company called Lifestyles Unlimited. When I was there, the items that they were saying and the different topics really made a lot of sense. And it was a lot of the tangible items that you usually don't always get. So I got really excited. And at the time, I was working at Papado, which is a pretty popular restaurant here. I was a bartender and a manager. And I decided, all right, I'm going to do real estate investing full time. I went in and gave them a month's notice and said, all right, I'm going to be quitting. And I became a member over there at Lifestyles. And while I was there, I was very active. I was going to all their meetings. I was sending emails to all their agents all the time, trying to find deals, because I didn't really know how to do the deals, like the specifics of it, but I knew I wanted to be involved. And because I was so involved, they asked me to become a real estate agent and to service their investor clients that were constantly looking for deals. And I thought that would be a great opportunity for me. Number one, I would get access to MLS, but the opportunity to leverage all the deals that these other investors would be doing and kind of pretending as if they were my own deals, learning how to deal with setbacks, how these investors were looking at deals was a great way for me to really learn at an exponential rate. And so I really took advantage of that, became an agent with them and worked with them for quite a while. And I did that, and eventually there were two gentlemen that started another company called Equity Academy, where they were an education and mentor group, and I joined them, helped them build that business, did a bunch of videos, real estate training videos, and things of that degree. Eventually I moved on to becoming an independent wholesaler, which I did for several years, and sold a lot of properties, did a lot of deals. And I actually, one of the companies I sold a lot of properties to was ATW Investments, and they buy the most residential investment properties in Central Texas, and they asked me to run their acquisition team. So I ran their acquisition team, finding the properties, helping their team members there to negotiate and work the deals properly, and did that for about a year and a half. And now I recently got married and have a baby on the way, and my wife and I have decided to invest full-time with each other, building our own investment portfolio, and that's what I'm doing now.
Great. Well, congrats on the family. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm going to have a little zoo here with all our other animals too.
So what other animals do you have? I didn't know that you had many animals.
Yeah, we have a dog and two cats, and the baby on the way is going to be a little girl, so we're going to have a full house.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember we sat down at a Starbucks several years ago whenever I was planning out REI Mobile, the CRM software, because you were independent wholesaler, and you had your systems set up with spreadsheets and things like that, because you did a lot of work with other investors. And, so I wanted to talk with you whenever I was researching how to best set that software up. And so I just remembered, you sharing a lot with me back then, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I remember that too. That was a good conversation.
Yeah. So, and that software is now out, and we've got that in beta testing and adding a whole bunch of cool stuff in there too. But today on the show, following along with this whole series of foundation and mindset and goal setting that we've been doing on the Flipping Junkie podcast, I wanted to bring you on to talk about what a lot of people have questions about, and I think what people use as an excuse to stay in their comfort zone and not ever really take action to try to buy any houses or buy any investment properties. And that's just that they feel like they need a company or something to set up first, and they're not sure what entity to set up, how to go about it, how much it costs. And then they use that as an excuse, as not having a company, as saying, well, I don't want to make a mistake and do it in my personal name and get sued or something, and all those kind of things. And so, maybe we can start the conversation about that with how, when you were getting started, did you first set up a company before you ever did any investing?
No, I didn't start a company just because I didn't have enough knowledge on it and how to do it and the process behind it. I knew it was important, but I really wanted to get started, and that was kind of low on the priority list for me when I originally was starting.
Yeah, and that's how it sort of was for me as well. And so how long did you go? And so you were just buying in your name, or what were you doing whenever you got started?
Yeah, I was just buying properties, writing contracts in my personal name. I didn't really take getting an entity set up seriously probably until about 3 years ago or so. At that point, that's when I sat down and really took the time to create my LLCs, figure out how I wanted to structure my business. Because at that point, money was starting to come in, and as you're making more and more money, you need to be more and more responsible. And that's something that was I had delayed for too long. But I went for quite a while just doing it in my personal name uh,
And what kind of investing were you doing?
without an LLC or.
What was your typical exit strategy for the houses that you were buying? What was the strategy you were using back then when you were buying in your own name?
Well, mainly what I was doing was just wholesaling. That's why that's kind of the biggest reason probably why I didn't get the LLC was because when I'm exiting out of the deal in a wholesale transaction, you're in and you're out. You don't really hold on to anything. So liability is a lot less compared to holding a home or selling a property that flip wise. That's probably why I just was wholesaling during that time frame.
Okay. And so what do you recommend for people that are just getting started, that are sort of on the fence, saying, what should I do? What kind of entity should I set up? Should I even set one up? What's your view? What's your take on that?
Definitely. So my take on it is, if you're fresh and really getting started, I wouldn't be concerned about setting up an entity right away, because there's a lot for you to be learning, and it could be one thing to kind of deter you from actually taking action and going down the route and doing things, because especially when you're dealing with legal entities, you want to make sure you're doing it right and what's the right name, and who's going to be the managers on it and how do I file it, and all these things can be deterrents from you to actually taking action of like doing a first deal. So I give a priority to taking action and getting your first deal first over creating your entity. But shortly after that, once you start bringing in some money, definitely something to be looking at. And there's a lot of information on the internet where you can look up and say, how can I form it? What are the steps, 1, 2, 3 to do that? But if you're in the business, you can ask around other investors to get some guidance. Maybe they can tell you how they do it. Maybe you can get someone lucky enough to walk you through it, or maybe they can even refer you to a real estate lawyer. There's plenty of real estate attorneys out there that will, freely and kindly kind of guide you through it. Those type of things. But at first, if you're just getting started, the goal is to take action to start moving forward in your real estate investing career. So I would put that as a priority.
Right. So don't use it as an excuse to not do anything. I wonder how many, what the stats are. It'd be very interesting to see what the stats are for the number of entities that have been started that have never done anything, never done any business, and were just shut down.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Or where they just maybe, spent some money and did some deductions, had a loss, and then just closed it down because they never really bought any houses. Because the stats for people wanting to get started in flipping and real estate investing, but not ever doing a deal is pretty crazy. I mean, do you have a rough idea of what those stats are? Something I think people a lot of times just make it up. It's something like 90%.
It's got to be a massive number. I mean, honestly, when I very, very first started, I did create an LLC. Now that I'm thinking about it, with my parents, because I was really excited to get started in real estate with them. But there was several years that went by without me actually doing. I worked as an agent for a while, and then I became a wholesaler. And several years went by where I never really used it. And then when I started doing transactions on my own, at that point, my parents were doing a whole different thing, and I never even used that LLC. So,
yeah, wow.
I have an example of not using an LLC right there.
And there's other things that you can use if you don't want to use your name, for marketing and things like that. If you want to use a company name, what we did when we got started was I think the first several we just in my own name, but it was pretty soon that I went and actually did a DBA, which is a doing business as.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't know, it's very cheap, and it's not really even an entity. It's just that you can use that as sort of a marketing or a name to buy properties and stuff like that. So it doesn't really offer you any protection. It's just a thing to not have your name out there.
And yeah, getting a DBA is actually pretty easy. A lot of people might think that it's kind of difficult, but really all you do is go down there and fill out the form, turn in the money, and then you have a DBA, and now you can use like an official branding name with your
Right.
business and marketing.
Right. And so if you have that name, you can maybe do that. And then once you start doing deals and then turn that into an LLC. And it's just to make sure that, you do that corporate name check, right, though, for any similar names so that you can make sure that you get it whenever it comes time to want to use that name.
Right.
Because they'll check. I think for one of our companies, we had to get approval from a company in Dallas that was completely separate. I think it was like home care, like, in-home care or something like that.
Really?
But the name was real close. So I had to send them a letter and they had to accept allowing us to use the name because it was similar, but a different business.
How interesting. Yeah. And I guess maybe my name must have been so off the wall. I haven't had to do that yet.
Well, I get emails sometimes too from, this is for a different name, but I get emails sometimes for people wanting to give me their pets, because I guess there's some kind of no-kill shelter or something with a name like that. And so
Oh,
I
how
get
funny.
emails. Yeah, I get emails all the time about wanting to bring Lucky in and things like that. And I feel bad about it because I don't know who to send it to, and I don't, so I just delete them. But
You just delete them, man.
well, I don't know. I mean, they're not even in San Antonio. I don't know where to send those.
No, I'm joking. I'm
I'm gonna have to
joking.
delete that out. No, I'm just kidding.
That's kind
But
of funny. And for me, actually, now that we're talking about the LLC stuff, at first I didn't really give it as much importance, but now when I'm looking at now that I'm doing my business with my wife and everything, I'm kind of on the other side of the extreme. I'm a little bit more aggressive and kind of um, more over the top with my um, legal entities and my LLCs, just because I want to make sure I have as much liability protection as possible.
right, and so that touches on a little bit of what you had talked about before. You said, speak with other investors, experienced investors in town, or real estate attorneys. And I think that's excellent advice because who better to talk to than somebody else that's probably likely gone and done a bunch of research. And where would you find those types of investors, and how would you approach them about that?
Well, I mean, if you're just starting out, the very first thing you can do is go into all the local groups, of course. Look up real estate investor groups on Meetup. I'm sure Google, you can find some. And just not only talking to the people that are in the room, sitting in the chairs like you are, but keep an eye out for not only the vendors, who are usually the companies that are there, they're usually a little bit more knowledgeable, but even more so the people that go up and talk a lot or seem to know a lot of people. They might be a little bit more involved, and that might lead or hint to them being more knowledgeable in the business, and then you can just go up to them and ask them. But as you're getting more and more involved in real estate, you're going to find out who the active players in your market are and just seek those people out. And what you'll find in most cases are those really active people are more than willing to give time and advice because they started where you started. And, it's kind of real estate is a people's business. So if you can help each other out, you never know how you can help them in the future too.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that's something, no matter what you're trying to do, just knowing who is the real deal in your area. To over time, don't expect to just walk up and immediately become fast friends and expect them to give you all of their secrets and knowledge. But, give before you try to receive. And, and another important thing regarding that, though, wouldn't you say would be, depending on what your strategy is. Like if you're going in to be a landlord, you might want to have a different entity than if you're going in to do fix and flips versus owner financing and things like that because of all the different tax and ramifications, right? So maybe keep an eye out for the people that talk about the area that you're wanting to be in.
Yeah, the way I have it, my structure now is I have an LLC specifically for flips. I have LLC specific for my wholesale transactions, and then all of my holds, I put each of the properties in a individual LLC. So that each property is in its own LLC, so they all have their own protection, basically, which is a little bit more aggressive than what most people do. Um, but it's something that I want to make sure that I have as much protection as possible in that regard.
Yeah, so what was the thinking behind that? So if something were to happen at one of the rental I mean, could you walk us through maybe the thinking behind setting it up that way?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Could you walk us through the thinking behind setting up your entities like that for rental properties?
Well, basically, when I was talking to my lawyers and my CPA, it was something, and my wife, it was something that we kind of came to the decision that we wanted to um, segregate each property into its own LLC, so that if one LLC was ever sued, they could only go after the assets in that LLC. So if we got sued for one property, let's say property A, then they would only have access to property A in that lawsuit. They couldn't access my property B, C, or D because all of those are individually. They all have their own LLCs in that regard.
All right, great. So, and some people say, well, that can get expensive and time consuming, but really, I mean, what's more expensive, right? Having something that attaches to all the properties or, in the lawsuit, versus having that level of security around it, right?
No, that's exactly the way we thought about it. Is yes, it is a little bit more cost consuming, definitely, especially on a time level too. But it's very preemptive, and when we're dealing with houses that are worth tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's definitely worth the extra minimal cost to prepare properly. Because I definitely have heard stories of people being sued, and even though they were being sued for illegitimate reasons, or it wasn't like a true I guess a true reason to be sued about, maybe they decided to settle outside of court, or maybe they ended up losing in the transaction or in the lawsuit. It's just not worth having multiple assets at risk when that's a possibility.
Yeah, and I guess that could be seen as sort of a way to reduce the risk of even being sued, right? Because a lot of times, and this is my assumption, of course, but where it's they'll look and see what kind of assets you have before they decide whether to take it on, right?
Right.
Like if you have a way to pay them out.
The whole goal is, if you can make it harder for the opposing person's lawyer to track you down or to file the suit, if you make it harder and more time for that lawyer, then that means that's more costs for the person that's deciding to sue you. And the harder you can make it, the less likely you're going to be pursued completely. And that's another reason to use a land trust. With the anonymity to combine with the LLC can be a great way to deter potential lawsuits.
Right. And for people that don't know about land trust, would you be able to speak more in detail about those?
Well, basically, I'm not an official on the topic, but basically a land trust is an entity that you can hold property in, and there you have a trustee and a beneficiary. The beneficiary of the land trust is anonymous. The only information that's public is information about the trustee, and the trustee is the one that kind of does the day-to-day business for that land trust, as the operating of the management or things like that. But they're not necessarily the beneficiary. And when someone sues you, they need to sue the land trust, and then they need to find out who the beneficiary is. And the trustee can basically decide not to give that information out, and then the judge needs to give an order to give the information of the beneficiary out to a lawyer that is doing the lawsuit. So it just adds a level of anonymity, like I mentioned, which makes it that much harder for someone to impose litigation against you.
Right. So if they don't know who the beneficiary is, they can't go into county records and do a search for that entity because it's nowhere to be found because it's the beneficiary and it's not recorded anywhere. The land trust isn't recorded, just the name of the land trust.
Right.
Right. And yeah, that's a very good point. And another point that you made, or you actually discussed just a little bit ago, was talking about how you had made decisions based on your discussions with your CPA and real estate attorney. I can't stress enough that people need to find attorneys that specialize in real estate. Don't just go to a general counsel attorney and hope to get the right information about which kind of entities and all that kind of stuff to use. And it's better to find one, even better is to find one that other investors are using in your area, or even anywhere in the country. Well, mostly in your area because it could be different throughout the country, but to find them because they've already sort of done a lot of the research and are experts in what best to use. And everybody's situation is a little bit different based on what your assets and what you're trying to protect and what you're trying to do. So how did you find your attorney that you used?
Well, the attorney that I used, and I actually have contacts with a few attorneys, but the one that I use the most, the way I got in contact with her, and she's great, by the way, is by one of my real estate investors that I was selling my houses to as a wholesaler. I was doing a lot of deals with him, and I noticed that she was getting involved in a lot of our transactions, and she was like just a general point of contact. So then I just started talking to her and kind of picking her brain and getting her advice, and then I just started using her when I had the opportunity to for my own transactions. So, and that's really, it just kind of grew organically just by seeing how involved she was with one of my real estate investors. I mean, really, like I said earlier, it's a people business. You know, if you just keep in contact with active people and you ask them, you know, who do they recommend, most times they're going to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. It is that important. That saves you a whole lot of ton and hassle too. So many of us want to go out and figure everything out ourselves, thinking that we'll figure out a twist that someone else hasn't thought of, and it's just you're reinventing the wheel all the time. And I still find myself doing it. It's a curse.
Right. And something that I'm, since we're talking about all the LLCs and everything, something I haven't incorporated yet, but as I get more and more properties I'll plan to do in the future, is incorporating LLCs from a different state. I don't know a ton about the subject, but I know that like in Texas, which is where I'm at, if you create an LLC here, people can do a search and it's public information who the managers of that LLC are. So like we were talking about earlier, to make it difficult for someone to pose litigation against you, that lawyer, all they need to do is, look up the LLC and then look up and find that you're the manager and that they obviously serve you. But what's something that I'm doing a little bit of research to plan on doing in the future is creating an LLC out of a different state, like Nevada or Delaware, where the managers aren't public information, and that having that LLC own the LLC that I have in place here in Texas will add another layer of protection. And then when they look up that LLC, the owners and the managers of that LLC is not for public information. So it'll make that even harder again.
Yeah, so definitely something to look into. There's a lot of, and I guess, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, and I guess getting back full circle into the beginning of the discussion, and I think this goes for more of people that are sort of still trying to venture out of their comfort zone and get started. Don't use all of this talk and everything as a reason to not get started. It should, really, you should just go out there and start doing things, taking action, meeting with other investors, and making sure that you're going to be one of the 5 or 10% that actually end up doing a deal in the business before you put forth the effort to set up your entities. And of course, this all also goes back to how many assets, how much assets you have and things like that, that you don't want to put out there. So if you have a lot of assets that you need to protect, it's probably better to go ahead and set something up. But if you don't have a lot of assets to protect, then, just maybe taking action and getting started and getting going with it. But the number one thing I think that's important to say is, the best thing that anybody can do to avoid litigation and problems is to just do everything on the up and up. And
Definitely.
always, integrity and everything, and just always, being the person that makes sure that you do the right thing all the time. And the reason why we still have to set up entities and try to protect ourselves is because of the frivolous lawsuits. And
Yeah, and those exist. Those
right.
are out there.
Right. And so that's more of the reason. But really, the best way to stay out of trouble is to always do things on the up and up. So,
yeah, that's something that I always made an extreme effort in how I operated from a business standpoint, was always being honest with people, always doing full disclosures, never trying to pull wool over people's eyes. And what I found by doing that is usually most people are very receptive to that and appreciate that. And if you explain it the proper way and however things are operating, they're more than willing to go along with you in that process and help you out. I've had plenty of situations where, like in a wholesale deal, I just explained to them what's going on, and things might not have lined up, or maybe my buyer all of a sudden needed a few extra days. The fact that I was honest with people and built that rapport with them, that connection, they really respect you. They're more than willing to help you out and say, hey, it's no problem, or even if a reduction in price or things like that. I've had plenty of situations, people helping out, and that's because of the way I'm operating. And if you operate with a high level of honesty and integrity, then it'll reflect in how all your transactions happen. And that in itself is going to be the first deterrent to any problems.
right. And that's super powerful. I mean, even just, with working with motivated sellers, whenever you operate from that perspective and you were just that way genuinely, it's obvious to people, and people are more willing to sell their house to you. And you can't really fake that very well. So, and it's, if you, a lot of times it's, people say it's not so much even about price that they're selling for. A lot of times it's more that they just felt better about you. And that's why they went with you to sell their house to you.
Yep.
So it's just the best thing for everybody. But so if you're ever in a situation where you have an issue or you have a problem, you need to always think about, being in the other side of the transaction and their shoes and how you would want to be treated. And that's where, like you said, is having the full disclosure and letting them just know the truth of the matter and what the problem is. It's just the best way to handle it.
Exactly.
So I think we had a lot of great info in this episode. And I wanted to ask you about, are you reading any books right now that you would recommend?
Definitely. I'm always trying to be reading, always trying to keep learning. The book that I'm currently reading is The Virgin Way by Richard Branson. He's the one with the Virgin Group and Virgin Mobile and Virgin Airlines, and he's kind of the billionaire playboy, I suppose, in the sense that he's always having fun. And there's a story about him buying an entire island for $100,000. I mean, imagine
wow.
that. Imagine that negotiation.
Yeah.
I think I'm good, but not that good. But yeah, it's actually a pretty good book. It's very laid back, and the way he kind of describes it, it's kind of like, if a fun grandpa were talking to you. The concepts are very powerful. As an example, it'd be like, listen more than talking, which a lot of people know, but he breaks it down and he kind of translates that into the success he has in his business. And it's just like if you were talking to somebody. It's not like a very intense read, not very technical. It's one that's very easily to digest and has good concepts in there. And yeah, it's pretty good. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah, and then what are you doing right now in your business or personal development that's helping you the most?
That's helping me the most is reflection. Honestly, I hadn't really incorporated that as much up until recently. Just taking time to really organize my ideas, plan appropriately. I do a much better job now of planning my days and planning my weeks ahead of time. And, it's very easy in the business to get caught up in what needs to happen next. Day to day, you're like, all right, I need to call this seller, or I need to call this buyer, or, I need to work on this item or whatever. And you just kind of get in the motions. But really taking the time to sit down, reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and creating plans really has been helping with efficiency and just like clarity on what all of my actions are. So that's something that has really been impactful for me recently. It's reflecting and planning.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, that's huge. And I've been focusing on the same thing, and it is very powerful and helpful for clarity. Nothing's worse than going through the whole day running around putting out fires, and at the end of the day saying, man, what did I even do? The day's already over, and where did it go? Like you don't even feel like you've made any progress. You were just kind of taking care of everything.
Yeah, a big shift for me happened when, it's very common to have a to-do list. I imagine most people have a to-do list. It's just like, this long list, and sometimes it seems it's like of an infinite length, and you just put all these things that you need to do in it, and you just kind of work down your list and check them off as you go, which that in itself is powerful and can help in getting things accomplished if you compare it to not having a to-do list. But a really big transition for me happened when, instead of just having a to-do list, I was planning the particular items that needed to be done in my calendar. So basically, each to-do list had a meeting. Like if I needed to do this, this was occurring, from 10:30 to 10:45, something along those lines. And by doing that, I gave every to-do item a focused time. And when I started doing that, I noticed that I was getting things done a lot faster. I had a specific order in which I was doing things, or a focus in when I was just focusing on a particular item and getting the most out of that time. And so the reflection and the planning was just an evolution from that. Basically, once a week, I set a time in which it's like a meeting with myself where I just focus on, all right, what are the things that worked well and what didn't work well, and then I plan my next week in advance with all the to-do items that, with particular meeting times, quote unquote, during each day throughout the upcoming week. So
Yeah,
I recommend that.
That's a good idea. Have you read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod?
No, I haven't. I know you've been talking about that. I haven't heard it. I haven't read it yet, but I have heard a lot about it, and I kind of have from what it sounds like, I kind of have my own little version of it, but I definitely need to read it and incorporate it a lot more because it sounds a lot more precise than what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, and it's really just more about looking at what he did was looked at what the really successful people have done, like their morning routines, and basically found that usually people do one or two of these 6 things. And he said, why not do all of them every morning? And it's just a powerful thing, and it's a great idea, and it's a great story. And he actually had, died in a car accident for 6 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And, went from being told that he might not ever walk again to actually running an ultra marathon, which is
that's crazy.
Twice the length of a marathon. It's 50 something miles or something. But yeah, just excellent. And have an interview with him. So 1 week after this episode will be his interview on the Flipping Junkie podcast. So
really? That's awesome.
Yeah, check it out next week. I'll have him on and we talk through the book and everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, mornings are powerful. I purposefully try and schedule meetings and whatnot in the mornings and get them going in the morning, because what I found is if you have a good morning, it just kind of affects the rest of your day in a positive light.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was talking with Melissa, my wife, the other morning, because she always knows when I exercise in the morning because I get up before everybody else does, and usually I'm done exercising before she gets up, and then she knows the mornings that I'm exercising because I'm asking all these questions and like going like a million miles an hour with all these ideas, and she's like, I just woke up, but on the days that I don't, it's just a complete 180.
She isn't ready for you when you got your
Right.
mind going.
Right. So anyway, but okay, so I asked you what you're doing right now that's helping you the most in your personal development or business, and you had a really good answer for that. So is there a challenge that you have right now that's challenging you the most in your business?
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge is just becoming more automated. I've been reading a lot of books. Like one that I recently read is The 4 Hour Work Week, which is like an excellent read. It's very, very popular. I'm sure most of your audience has heard about it. But if you haven't read it, I do suggest it. But a lot of the big concepts in that book are leveraging your time, and he talks a lot about using like virtual assistants and you know focusing all your time on your most productive time and all the actions that are not as productive. Like let's say, if you take a lot of time cooking meals every single day, you cook 3 times a day. Well, instead of spending maybe 3 hours each day cooking, hire somebody else to do that, and the cost of that will actually be offset by the 3 hours you could put into more productive time, and it could be a net positive.
Right.
So as far as like automations and delegating my time more to my productive time, I've been trying to improve upon. It's probably my biggest weakness right now.
That's a good thing to work on. You can see a lot of benefit in improving. I don't know if I had read that book before I got rid of my lawnmower, but it's it's sort of the same thing because I haven't owned a lawnmower in probably 10 years, and I will never own one again. But
No, it's true because the natural inclination is just, go do these things yourself because you can save money. But you don't really think about, well, if it costs me an hour and to mow the lawn, well, if I just paid somebody $50 for that hour, and then I can make $120 in an hour. That's a $70 net positive. And if you do that across the board with all of your, if you analyze your life, time you're doing laundry, cooking,
yeah,
lawn,
yeah,
and in your business too, instead of you being the one writing the contracts, maybe having someone else write contracts or something like that. It's something to always be looking at and trying to improve, and I can
right.
definitely do better on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I just heard Andy McFarland on Justin Williams' House Flipping HQ podcast was talking about taking the number of how much money you want to make in your business profit wise for the next year and dividing that by 2,000, which is roughly the amount of hours that you would work in a year, to determine pretty much what you would be worth per hour. And I think $1 million is something like $500. So basically, if you're doing stuff that you could pay somebody less than $500 for, and obviously that's got to be something that's built up towards, you can't immediately start doing that, but just thinking in those terms, though, I think helps people sort of see where, maybe doing certain tasks isn't the wisest thing in the world.
Yeah, it's the mindset. It's the
Mm-hmm.
mindset. Like an example for me is, hey, I'm a real estate agent, and I could be searching MLS for my own deals and writing my own contracts and stuff, but it's much more time efficient for me, and I can make more money if I just hired an agent to do that for me. you know
Absolutely.
that that's like a great example. If you can just reflect on what are the things you're doing, because it's very easy to get caught up in your own habits, and it's just the way things are. And that's why the planning and reflecting is so important, because then if you take the time to sit back and really analyze it, things will come to light that usually don't shine.
Yeah, stopping to think through what you're doing and how you're acting, and all. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
something to be worked on all the time. because you could fall out of it. It's just like working out or dieting or something where you make it a habit, and not just expect to do it for a week or something and have benefits from it for a long time. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hey, Marco, I really appreciate you being on the show. I think, I really enjoyed this episode and talking with you. And
Well, I think this is your best episode yet.
oh, no, it is.
Well, I don't know. Your next one with the Miracle Morning is going to be a good one. I'll have to tune in for that.
Yeah, definitely do it. Check it out. And we'll have you on again on the podcast as we move through this series. We'll be going into, finding how to find deals, analyze deals, get money to buy houses, all that kind of stuff. We're going to cover the whole spectrum of things, so I'm sure I'll have plenty of opportunities to bring you back on and talk about some of the other areas of expertise that you have.
All right. Well, definitely. I look forward to it. It's definitely been my pleasure. It's always great talking to you. Our conversations are always impactful ones. And, we went over some technical things, but, real estate is a exciting and fun business and truly can award the many dreams that you've always had for your life. And I'm excited to be a part of it. And you can meet some great people such as yourself, Danny. So thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, appreciate that. And how can the guest find you if people want to reach out to you and talk to you? Is there a way that people can find you?
Probably the easiest way to contact me is just Facebook. You can look me up, Marco, Marco, and then my middle initial A, and last name is Romero, Romero. And just search for me on Facebook. My profile photo is just like it's actually a piece of art that's orange and white, and just friend me on there. We can keep in contact with each other and maybe help each other out in some way.
Well, great. Thanks a lot, Marco, and definitely we'll be in touch and hang out and go meet up at Starbucks again. It's been a little while.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Danny. You take care.
All right. Bye. All right. Another great episode. Marco really shared some great information, and I think getting into the discussion at the end, I really enjoyed because I'm getting to be more and more about, self-development and improvement and using that to grow yourself, to grow your business, and to grow in your life so that you can live the life that you want right now and get everything that you want out of life. So it's great to always talk with somebody like Marco and talk more about that. And he talked about wanting to get into more, some of the automation and things like that. And that also fits into what we're doing with REI Mobile, which is our CRM software system. We're working really hard to add a lot of automation to save time and effort for real estate investors as they are keeping track of their leads with follow-up and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't checked out reimobile.com, check it out. It's REI, which is real estate investor, so reimobile.com. But thanks again for listening to the Flipping Junkie podcast. I really do appreciate you listening in and being a fan. So have a great week, and be sure to tune in next week because we've got Hal Elrod, for the author of The Miracle Morning, which I tell everybody about. Awesome book, and it'll really, truly change your life. So check that out next week. Next Monday we'll have that episode with Hal Elrod, and we'll see you then.